We're going to be doing this scene, which is the fire tower in a storm. I took this photo myself in Montana. I used to paint scenes like this all the time. I love dark images, silhouettes, the scaffolding of transformer towers or a fire tower or power lines. This was something I was painting all the time, especially when I was starting off, because it was pretty simplistic and it takes advantage of a lot of elements of acrylic ink. You can use a dip pen for these details here, and then brush and translucent washes for the clouds. So I think this will be a great one, especially for beginners. I anticipate this painting will probably take us 2 classes. I think it will be a pretty fast one and a satisfying one. I'm just going to review a few things we're going to start with. So first of all, I'll go over the materials I have here for anyone who's new. So I have 3 blues. There are only 2 blues that I put on my materials list, and I'm usually kind of making disparaging comments about this one, which is indigo. However, I think the indigo is the exact color that we'll need right in here, so I am using it. But it is sort of a, it's a guest star on the palette. It's not a necessary color. I think Ronnie blue with just a little touch of crimson and maybe some burnt umber would get you very close to this because it's a violety blue, but it's not very chromatic, hence why I would add a little bit of burnt umber to make it less vivid. So here we have indigo, Ronnie blue, processed cyan, flame red, crimson, burnt umber, Indian yellow, brilliant yellow. Oh, no, sorry, processed yellow. Looks very similar to brilliant yellow. And a dirty white, which you never know. Sometimes it's very handy. I don't know if I'll use it this time. And a brand new clean white. I ordered like 10 whites because I am always running out, but no longer. I will be set for a couple of months of that. Very exciting. And you'll notice I have some of these that are in little jars and some that are in ink caps. So the ones that are in ink caps come in these big jars. And I am really trying to get through these because I've had them forever. So I will just pour a little bit into the ink cap, and that's how I use it. I've seen some people use those palettes that have wells. They're very handy for watercolorists. I imagine that would be a great palette for what we use here too. And then over here with my brushes, I have a variety of sizes. I have the biggest brushes that I have. I think these are like size 20 or so of Klinsky Sable, and then all the way down. And I have some various sizes. I've got some, I mainly have rounds. That's what these are. And then I have a couple of flats just because they were around. And then here's the smallest one I have, which is it's a Princeton round Klinsky Sable. Oh, they always put the size here, and that's exactly where I get all the paint. But I'd say this is probably a 4. I don't have my smallest brushes out because I don't think I'll get to that level of detail today. We'll save all of those details for the next time we paint next month. Our reference photo, when you printed out in an 8.5 by 11 printer, it's pretty much the same size as our page, which is 8 by 10. So it's just a little bit smaller, which is handy. So then it's pretty much a one-to-one transfer. But of course, I don't know, if you, especially such a simple scene like this, if you wanted to zoom in and just do this and enlarge it. In fact, I was tempted to do this painting on my huge Moleskine sketchbook, which I don't have handy right now, but it's exactly twice the dimensions of this. It feels like the type of painting where I just want to stretch out. Okay. So I grabbed one of my largest brushes. And I got it pretty wet, but actually I might dab off some of that. And I'm going to go, hold on a minute. You know what? I think I'm going to do this area first. And let me zoom in so that we can sort of analyze what's going on in here because it's pretty interesting. And let me take the exposure down. Okay, so that's a little bit closer to what we see, the real thing. So from the reference photo that you have that you're either viewing on your screen, like the one that I emailed you, you'll be able to see these colors more clearly. This printout on a webcam, it's not quite as good quality. So refer to the real thing if you're painting along. But there's a really beautiful sort of gradient of color that's going on here. Um, it's this beautiful sort of yellowy peach, and then along the crest of this lower cloud, there's like a, a peach or pink halo. Um, so I think the way I'm going to approach this is I'm going to do a big sort of like a splotch, like just a big color swatch. And then I'm gonna, once it dries, I'll go over with the horizon and with the clouds. But I think getting this sort of as the backdrop and then laying the shapes on top will be a nice way to go about it. And we can always, of course, redo it again and again if it doesn't work out, but I think that's how I'm gonna try it the first time. I'm going to stay zoomed out for a little bit so you can see where I dip into which colors and mixing and things like that. So you get a good view of all the action. And then I'll zoom in later once we're getting into more of the meat of the painting and the details. Let me get that exposure back up just a bit. There we go. Okay. So my brush is still pretty wet. I almost went straight into that indigo after what I just said. Okay, so I'm going to go into the white instead. And I know I'm painting white on white. However, this white, this is the clean white, will just, I want to be able to paint wet into wet. So I'm just laying down, this is sometimes called a couch if you're working in oils. A couch, it's literally like, something that the paint can sit in. But it's just another way of saying you want to paint wet into wet. Okay, so I have a pretty thick puddle here as sort of like a nice silky, buttery texture. And I'm going to grab the process yellow. I'll use that at the top. And it's pretty light. It's pretty subtle, which is what I want. I don't want it to be too overpowering. Okay, and then in the middle, I'm going to get more and more peach. So I'm going to add still that same yellow and just a touch of flame red, and let's see what that does. Should I do flame red or should I do, I wonder if I should do crimson instead, but I'll go with flame red. Okay. You fiddle around with the exposure a little more because I don't know if you're getting how colorful this is looking. So now hopefully you can see a little bit better how it looks. I'm going to adjust this just a little bit because it's the most saturated through the middle and I actually need that down below. So I'm just going to add a little bit more white into the center just to dilute it. And I'm keeping my brush strokes really loose. Okay. I think that's good enough for now. So, yeah, I'm going to wait for it to dry to do the clouds. Well, actually, maybe I'll put the clouds in now because they have soft edges. They're pretty wispy in areas. And so maybe the wet into wet blending will actually play more to our advantage. So maybe I'll just dive in now. Okay, so I still have my big brushes and I'm gonna start off mixing the white and the indigo. So maybe already you can see why I don't really like this indigo. It's very gray. And in fact, I think it's even too gray right now. So I'm going to go into the Rodney blue to add a little action. There we go. Bring a little life into it. Okay, and the shape of the clouds, kind of like this. It's definitely more gray over here. Darker. Okay. Maybe I'll use my hands. Sometimes my fingers just get the best blending. It's like charcoal, it's just sometimes it's just what the doctor ordered. Okay, and I'll blend it here as well. Okay, that looks quite nice. I think that's good for a base layer. So now I'm just going to, and this is already, it's not, I wouldn't say that it's dry, but it's sort of in an in-between stage where I don't think we have to worry about like bleeding or anything getting out of control. So now I'm just checking out the horizon line. And the trees, like I think this horizon line is probably a little bit too straight, but the trees that we add in later will add a little bit more sort of a like an undulation in the horizon line that's adds the interest. So now I'm going to, this is an area, the horizon, where we want it to be like black, but as you know, instead of black, I think we should try to mix one from what we have on our palette, in our palette. And today I didn't even include any violets or greens. I used the very basic palette of the different versions of primary colors. So I just have red, yellow, and blue, and then like two versions of each. And then of course the guest star of the indigo, and then the burnt umber, because I always like having one earth tone on hand just in case it's handy. Okay, so I'm gonna grab one of my flat brushes. If you don't have one, you don't need one. But if you do have one, you're probably wondering when you could use one, and this is a good time. So I'm gonna dip into that indigo again. I'm gonna make a big puddle, and now I'm gonna go for, I think, crimson. Whoops, that's okay. Don't worry. Hmm, maybe I'll try to get rid of that right now. Yeah, that's not bad. And the ones down here will get covered up by trees. I'll be able to cover that up later. It's not a big deal. Okay. And I'm also going to put in the burnt umber, and that would get us pretty close to black. But it's a more interesting, chromatic, dynamic dark color. Seems to be a little heavy on the burnt umber, so I'm going to add in more indigo. This, what I'm doing right here, I had this huge puddle, and I'm sweeping it over from one page onto the other, going right over the centerfold. And I have no doubt that this paint is seeping through the area with the where the threads in the binding, and probably starting to dapple other pages that we've already finished in the sketchbook. That never really bothers me. I kind of like that effect. It makes a sort of cool, distressed, you know, it adds like a fresh spontaneity to the former paintings. I rarely fix a former painting unless if it went over like a face or something, in which case I would touch it up on top. But usually the sort of butterfly marks that show up from doing that really don't bother me. Okay, and I'm going to, you know what, before I go further, I was just about to put some trees in right here, like that. But I think instead I need to get this, there's like the top cloud, which we have, the little moment of sky, and now we need there's like a more distant cloud in the horizon that's a little bit more violety blue. So I'm going to get that in now. I'll grab a large brush again, but a clean one. And I think that color, I'm going to go more for the process cyan. And that's too dark and chromatic. So let me go into the dirty white. Yeah, that's better. All the dirty whites I have, I must have like 5 at a time. And some of them feel green, some look blue, some look gray. This one looks violet or red, which is perfect because I laid down blue and I actually want it to be a little bit more violet than that. So I put in a dirty white that leans red, and now I get the color I want. So just like I said, sometimes they're so handy. Okay, so my eyes, you can kind of follow my brush. You're also following my eyes with where I'm looking on the reference photo. I'm doing kind of a blind contour right now. I'm looking at the reference photo and not where my hand is going. Although now I'm like looking where my hand's going. Okay, and I'm gonna make that, I think I lightened it up a bit too much. I wonder if we could finish this in one session. You know, every now and then you paint something that just an hour is really all it needs. Yeah, we have an hour from here. It's not impossible. We might be able to do that. Okay. I'm gonna get rid of this little mark that I made. You probably don't have to do that because you're probably more um, maybe painting with a little less exuberance or not as messy as I am. I'm just going to cover it up a little. Wonder if the rate of the I think the tower will go right there, which will be handy because then I'll really cover it. Okay, so what do I want to do now? Maybe I'll just double check everything that I've done before I start moving forward. Yeah, I've got like the horizons just about the same size. Clouds I'm happy with. The colors I like. Okay, yeah, I think this is looking nice. Now it's just a matter of starting to let's refine the drawing a little bit. The clouds I think are one area. Like I love this motion and these big brush marks I have. I think that's really nice. And because we did such a heavy application of the white, which as you know, like the white has more of the acrylic component to it. And since we use that in the early layers, you can see like we're already getting that nice sort of glossy acrylic ink texture. We're bypassing that like pilly, um, papery stage that the last one was kind of, it happened in the last one a lot. The too much like watery washes in the beginning made the paper pill, which was a sort of a nuisance. So we totally hopped over that issue. So I'm going to switch to a slightly smaller brush. This brush is it's a sable, but not a Kolinsky sable. So Kolinsky sables are always in these sort of nice points. And then these sables just sort of fray like this. They're brushy. It feels more like a makeup brush. So I'm going to use that one now because I don't want sort of definitive marks. I'd rather have soft marks. Let's zoom in just a bit so we start focusing more on the painting. And I'm going to press down on the ferrule of the brush to really splay the bristles. And let me get some of these. You know, I think the white on the cloud itself is a little bit too high contrast. I've kind of discovered when it comes to painting clouds, you know, the shadowing in clouds is very difficult to get. Like my clouds always end up looking too heavy, too dark. They're like silhouettes or big shapes floating in the sky. They don't have that sort of puffy, voluminous, soft look. And I think the secret is low contrast within shadowing. So if you're like just a small nudge in value um, is enough to really sort of get the effect that you want. So let me just using my page as a palette, and I'm just mixing up I'm going to try to be good. I'm going to dip in with a fresh brush into the white. Okay, so let's mix that up and see how it is. I think I can go even a little lighter. Ooh, ooh. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna add more like light into the clouds with just the slightly lighter blue. There we go. Using my finger again to blend. Okay. All right. So now I think to make these, I think we need a little bit more variety in the values. One of the reasons why I'm struggling with pulling the values apart is maybe because we haven't gone dark enough. Because in the real scene, this is definitely the darkest thing. But the clouds are not that far behind. There's like maybe one or two value shades in between. So I need to bring them a little closer together. So I'm going to darken this by a lot. Um, I think I might grab one of my squares, my flats, because I don't know, why not? And I'm going to go into the indigo. I was dipping my brush, as you can see, watercolorists will squirm at this, but I am dipping my brush all the way to the bottom. I'm submerging the ferrule. It's not really technically what you should do for the integrity of the brush if you want to be really delicate with your Klinsky sables. Um, but I like getting down to the bottom of the acrylic ink jar where the acrylic, even if you shake it up, is still going to settle down there. Okay, and I'm going to do this again because it's been working so well for me today. As we can see, like this is where I'm going to get a little water, but the rain seems to be falling. I think I caught this picture like right when the rain started falling. Just spectacular skies in Montana. When I was younger, I drove cross country twice and then once more after college, um, because I was from a Navy family, so we moved all the time and we didn't really take family vacations. So instead, when we had to move, we would drive and that would be our family vacation. So I've seen all the tourist trap stuff, Prairie Dog Town being my absolute favorite. So we did the northern route and the southern route, but we never made it to Montana. It was just like just out of the way. But I kept hearing about how it's the land with the skies that go on forever, the big sky state. And I was so intrigued and I romanticized it my whole childhood. Like one day I'm going to go to Montana where the skies go on forever. Um, and so I finally went in 2016 and it did not disappoint. It lived up to my wildest dreams. It was so beautiful. I can tell why it's such a national treasure. Oh, and if you're a professional artist or writer, poet, creative writer, photographer, this was a fantastic artist in residence program I was at called the Taft Nicholson Center. And I don't see that one often, like on search engines for art residencies and whatnot. So I think they rely on word of mouth. So here I am telling you, apply to this one because it is so good. And if you want help with your application or if you need a recommendation letter, please email me and ask. I'd be delighted to do it. Um, so yeah, keep that in mind. All kinds of artists go to art residencies. You don't have to have like a killer CV and tons of you know, exhibition history or anything like that. You might be more competitive than you think. Even if you're just starting out, you have the very desirable title of emerging artist, which is like one of the sexiest phrases in the art world. Everyone loves an emerging artist, and that might describe you, even if you're coming to this after another career or something, because it would just refer to your professional experience, not your age. Okay, enough of that. I just recently taught two art business workshops at the Academy of Realist Art. So I'm still, I still have that monologue in my head because I was talking to people about that a lot. So it's fresh on my mind. Okay, so I think that is definitely closer to what we have in the reference photo. This needs some work because at the moment it looks like a mountain range. The Grand Tetons were around, so actually that wouldn't be, that's like, it could be mountains and it wouldn't be incorrect. But actually it was clouds, and so I want to stay true to the real thing. So I think I'm gonna go in with white and just like, you know, get the correct contour of the clouds by painting the sky behind it. So I'm gonna go do that. So I'll grab one of my smaller brushes. Here's this sharp one, small sharp one. See, we already need a small sharp brush. We're just flying. I hope I can fill, I'm sure I can fill an hour and a half, but um, yeah, this is good to know because I think I'm going to be teaching with Creative Bug again this year, which is, I think some of you found me through Creative Bug. I love Creative Bug. And I've been so busy with school, with me, I've been in school myself. And then I did an art residency in Kenya and traveled, I backpacked Europe after that and Jordan. And then I had a baby, and that's 2 years of your life, like poof, you know. So now I'm like, oh, I have time. I can go back to Creative Bug and film some new classes. So I'll be doing that very soon. But my point being, it's always nice to have like paintings to offer them that you can paint faster, like simple ones and then more advanced ones. So I'll have to keep this one in mind. Would be a good sketchbook class for like you know, a 1 hour or 2 hour painting. Okay, and we also discussed that there's like a peach halo. So I'm going to put that in right now. So I'm grabbing um, the Indian yellow and the flame red. I'm going to wipe off the excess. And then I'm just going to put that into the wet paint that I laid down. I don't know if that's working. Let me try that again. So now I'm dipping into white and I'm dipping into the brilliant yellow. Let me try that instead. So this might be a little heavier application than what I actually want, but I think I'm going to go back with white again to dilute it. So I'm just going to lay down, I'm sort of overshooting the mark here. There we go. And now I'll go in with more white and I'll sort of spread around what I have. And I'm going to do it just a minuscule dab of flame red to make sure it veers peach. There. Okay. So I think that's pretty good, but I think I can get even more specific on this. They're still looking like mountains. So I'm gonna zoom in even a little more for you. I wonder if it will get too blurry if I do that. I'll just go to there. Let me try that once more. Maybe I'll go for an even smaller brush. What's the smallest one I have? Take a look. Oh, that one looks good. Oh, you know what? These liner brushes might be nice. They're very long, um, but they can make some really beautiful calligraphic lines. And then I have this smaller, stiffer one. So I'll use both of these and see. Okay, I think that looks better. And then there are these little areas where the cloud kind of breaks up a little bit. So I'll get those in too. Like about here. Oh, and I should clarify, even if I film with Creative Bug this year, I don't think the classes would come out until next year because we're filming at the end of the year. So hold your horses, everyone. It'll still be a while. Okay, and I see that the sky's darker over here. Oops. There's like some strips right around here. Okay, I think we're ready to, well, actually, I'm just gonna, sometimes when the white dries, it starts to get a little bit, like it loses its opacity and it starts to look kind of gray. So I just noticed that happening there. So I just went in with a little bit more to punch it back up again while it was still wet. Okay, there. So now I think, I don't know, everything's looking good. It's just a matter, maybe it's time to put in trees. The fire tower will obviously be the last thing. And we'll do that with a dip pen. Or if you have a small thin brush, like the liner brush would work just as well. Um, but it's just a nice opportunity to use the pen if you want to try to use both utensils or both tools with the acrylic ink. I think the tree here is probably what we could do next because this is all dry and it's a pretty big compositional element that we don't have. So let's put that in. As you might recall in my recent classes, the things off to the side, I neglect until the last minute and then it's too late. Um, so I will not do that this time. Okay. Just cleaning off some of these brushes because I've gone through a lot of brushes already. I feel like I've used almost all of these. You can zoom out again a little bit so you can see more of what I'm doing. Okay. So I think, so if I bring over this is my off-camera um, reservoir of brushes. I'm going to grab one of these super, super frayed ones. If you don't have a really frayed one, you can use that trick that I showed earlier in class where you have a brush and then you just press down at the ferrule and splay the bristles. But if you keep brushes around long enough and you never throw them away and you use them a lot, eventually you will get one that looks like that. And it's fantastic for special effects. So I'm going to use this brush now to get in just sort of the shape of that tree and all of its leaves, and it just makes excellent foliage textures, these types of brushes. Okay, so we don't have black, and that's what I need. So I just dipped into indigo, crimson, and burnt umber. If I had a dark green, that would probably be a nice time to use it right now too. I don't want to add in a yellow because I think it would increase the value too much. Okay. Yeah, and you can see it just makes like when you put your brush down, it's as if you get, 5 strokes in one. kind of hard to see what it does from down there. I'm just gonna, I think it goes kind of like this. And then maybe we get those rooftops in, but um, I think this might be a good time to instead put in the trees on the horizon line. Okay, so for the trees on the horizon line, I think I will eventually go in with a dip pen to get all the nice texture. Yeah, I think I'll just do that now. I feel like a dip pen is it's how I usually do it. It always has a nice effect. What I was thinking for the bigger trees, I would probably lay down like a puddle with a brush that's about the same width as the tree, and then move the edges of the puddle with the dip pen. But I think I'm just going to go straight to the dip pen. So I have tons of dip pens, and they're all quite, um, I haven't taken very good care of them. I promise I take good care of my art materials. But dip pens, I mean, they're like 75 cents a nib, so I think I've kind of relied on that. I've never thrown them away. I hoard them all like like everything else in my art studio. I'm meticulously neat and tidy everywhere else in my life and in my home, except for my art studio. Um, you can imagine in my career of 15 years doing this, I've never thrown away a jar, and I have them in a gigantic box under my desk right now. And I figure someday I'll do some kind of art installation with them, or I don't know, something. But my dip pens, it's the same way. And my brushes. But those will forever be useful. They never go bad. Okay. Kind of funny. I don't think you can see this, but my cat is right here. Like I can hear him purring in my face. You know what? Um, I am going to quickly mark off the tops of the trees so that I don't go too tall, which I could tell I was just about to go too tall with this tree. And it's fine if I do with that one, but not the other ones, because I want to make sure the tower feels really tall. And I'm going to dwarf it if I make the trees around it compete. So I'm just going to make these little marks to remind myself, don't go higher than this. I think my radio or my fire tower will go right here. These ones are about, yeah, like that. Okay, so that's kind of this is the tallest one. Might even be too tall. I think I'll go a little lower. Okay, there. So just some little indicators to remind me so I don't get in the flow and just start going nuts with these treetops. Thought I was over this cold, but it's progressing as I speak. Like it's it's coming back right now. Oh, I don't think I've had to cancel a webinar yet, too. I've been holding strong, so I didn't want to break the streak. Hmm. And isn't art the best medicine? Isn't that what they say? Something like that. Okay, so if it were up to me, I would probably like if I wasn't painting on camera, I might let this dry overnight and then do this step because this white is tacky. I wonder. Hmm. You know, I'm gonna do the rooftops because as I'm getting over to this cloud line, I can tell it's really not dry and it might make a mess with the trees. And I really liked how it turned out and I don't want to mess it up. So instead, let's do the rooftops and it'll help us buy a little time before we go back in with the trees and maybe it'll be dry by then. If you're ever really in a rush and you can't wait overnight, you can always hit it with a hair dryer or like a heating dryer thing. And those are really handy and they work. So I could go grab a hair dryer, but I think it'll be okay. Um, oh, this is a perfect opportunity to use a flat. So I'm going to grab a little bit of a smaller flat. This is a size 6. Trickel Golden Taklon. Um, and I'll dip into the dirty white and the indigo. So I want to use the same colors that are in the sky because these rooftops are reflecting the sky. And I'm just going to put them in and make sure that I'm doing like a parallelogram. Um, the flat brushes really help with that. And they're all facing different directions, which adds some interest. So I'm going to be conscientious of that. That one has like trees breaking up the bottom of it. I think I'll get rid of it. Can be hard to make these lines straight. Sometimes they kind of bow, and then it looks like a pillow or something instead of a roof. Okay. Maybe I'll even do, just to make that one clear, like that. This is getting a little light, so I added in just a touch of more indigo to make sure it's dark. This is a thin one. I like that. Okay. This one. This is going over those tree marks I made. I think the lower branches kind of blend in, so you can't really tell. Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all of them. If these are jumping, they're jumping out too much. I'm not entirely happy with them. But I think when they dry, I'll just glaze over everything with one um like translucent wash of the indigo, and they'll just kind of set everything back and recede them into the background a little bit more. The trees, these ones aside, the trees do stay below this cloud line, and the cloud is dry. Let's go for it. Let's see. And then if there's a problem, then we can practice troubleshooting. But I am going to let go of the dip pen because the dip pen presses into the page too much and it can sort of carve into puddles. It's just, it has a heavier touch. The brush, so I'm going to use this lighter liner, can just sort of dab the top. It's a little bit more of a feathery application, so I think we have a better chance of success. So put the dip pen down and let's try a brush instead. So I'm going to make a little puddle here. This will be like my inkwell. So I grabbed, that's Rodney blue, indigo, little of the umber, a little touch of crimson. Mix it all together. It should be pretty much a black. Okay, gotta get a little more of the blue. So I'm going to use this as my inkwell. And I'm going to pull my reference photo back up. I wasn't really loving the mark making with that pen anyway, so this might have an even sharper um, mark making and lines that I'll like. In fact, maybe this time I'll do a brush for the fire tower too. I've done scaffolding several times on videos or time lapses and webinars. And I always do them with a dip pen. So if you're interested in that technique, I know it's out there, but doing it with a brush, I don't think I've done that before. So maybe I'll try that instead. It's really the same, but the handling is a little bit more delicate. Okay, and there's my The challenge of pine trees is not to make them all look the same. Like when there's just the same species of tree all grouped together on the horizon, they start looking like little tree stamps. So I'm trying to be conscientious when I see them bunched together. any sort of overlaps or differences in height, capitalizing on all of that to make it feel more naturalistic, um, and specific to this scene and not just generic pine trees on a hill scene, of which I think we've all seen tons of images like that. Oop, see what I tell you? Okay, I won't go above the clouds again because that had the exactly what I was afraid would happen. Just bled and pooled and not horrible, but I don't want it. Okay. Thomas, what do you think? You seem to be very interested today. Okay, and here's where the trees really pick up. And we've got a bunch of them. I might go back in with for sky holes as well. Just a nice way to like I like the push and pull we have when we do foreground on top of background and then background on top of foreground and then back and forth and back and forth. And it just makes a really nice textured effect. And it's harder for people to figure out how you did it. And I really like having those moments of interest and sort of mystery, complexity. Just makes the work more beautiful, more interesting. Not that I don't want people to paint like me or anything like that, because obviously here I am instructing how to paint like me. Um, but I do like having moments like that where someone looks at it and thinks like, how would she have done that? I think I'm getting a little bit into that generic pine tree thing I was saying I was going to avoid. So focus, Missy. They're all the same height as well. I think I'm not helping myself out with that. Gonna make this one thicker. Right in here. Just kind of gonna break up over that. And this tree also has a few branches that come out that are pretty cool. It's nice to have a page that's so painterly. This one feels really satisfying, like a painting that looks like a painting, you know. Those are always fun to make. Especially since I'm studying realism right now. Very nice to do just embracing the brushwork and the imperfections um it's also nice to know you can really spend like I mean I must spend about 20 hours a week doing realism. That's not like I'm brainwashed or anything. I can turn it on and off whenever I want. So I knew that that was the case, but some of my artist friends I'll tell them, I'm like, you've got to go to this school. You're gonna love it. You'll be able to draw, you know, like with skills you never thought were possible. And and they'll say like, but I'm afraid it'll change how I paint like my personal work. I'm like, no, like you're like we're more in control, I think, than we give ourselves credit for. Um, every single time you put your brush down on the page, you're making a choice. So yeah, it's just a tool that you can use at will. Great. Hmm. This all looks nice. I'm just gonna pull some of this down. Out. Yeah, I'm just making sure some of these kind of reach down below the horizon line so it doesn't look like they're all kind of on one plane, because I imagine they're sort of scattered in space. There we go. So now I'm going to wash over these rooftops with the remainder of the puddle because there's still a little bit left there. I think I'm going to use a bigger brush. Let me see. Okay. And just a bit of water and a bit of indigo. Ah, nice. That's just what I wanted, like just a veil to push them back in space so they're not so jumpy, grabbing our attention. I didn't expect it, but this painting really does show off the best, most convenient aspects of acrylic ink. The glazing, the opacity. You want pens, you want brushes, you can do it either way. Um, just the variety of textures and the ease that you get to create those textures with is so nice. Okay. It's a little brushy. I don't want it to, I like brushy, but I don't want it to be like stripy. So let me, there. Okay. Now, the fire tower is kind of the last thing, but what else? I think sky holes first. Let's do that. And sky holes up here might be nice as well. There's a little bit of a glare there. Let me see if I can. There we go. So, yeah, let me flip to last month's real quick. That's unfortunate, but it's an easy fix. Okay, so here's last month's. Uh, very nice, very different. Um, but the paper, like you see, we don't really have a glare except for down in here. And this one's like this page is already getting so thick and glossy, so the glare is becoming more of an issue than usual. But I hope we're all okay with it because that is like the best what I love, like the sort of textures that we get, that glossy finish. So it's starting to come through now, and that's why we're getting this glare. Last month we almost had none of those textures, and it was much more. We didn't have as much opaque application. So these paintings do feel very different from one another. That's nice. Yeah. Hmm. Nice to do those two in sequence because this is like pretty much the same view. Okay. So, I'll get rid of my tape mark. Just while I'm here, because that's pretty easy. Yep. You get a little cyan in there. Okay. So sky holes. Um, I think I'll do them along the pine trees first. I don't know how many I'll need. I'm gonna use the same brush. Actually, no, I changed my mind. I'm gonna use a smaller, stiffer brush for these. So I'm dipping into the white, and I'm going to, for these ones, I'm gonna try to replicate the color of the sky because I am painting the sky. So I'm grabbing just a little touch of the yellow and a just tiniest touch. It's actually hard to do. Just a hint of the flame red. And I don't want to overdo it. Mm, okay, I have to move him. There you go. Oh, there we are. I think those early sky holes I did were feel too watery. They still feel too watery. What's going on? Get my brush really dry. And I'm actually just going to wipe that off and do it again. And dipping the brush all the way to the bottom of the white and make sure that it's opaque. Okay, there we go. So this again is white with just a little bit, I'm just a little bit of the process yellow. Okay, seems a little better. So there's like moments in the pen work that I don't really care for my mark making. So now I can just make it more interesting or cover it entirely with just a little dab of white. So any like awkward branches that are sticking out too far, I get to correct those. All right. So that's it for everything that is above the horizon line or above the tree, above the cloud line, excuse me. So now for all the trees below the cloud line, I'll make sure that their background is that light blue. So I'm grabbing white again just because it's opaque. I don't really mind if the sky hole and the cloud and the sky itself is a little bit of a different color. Because since the colors usually aren't touching, like I'm going to the interior of the tree, they're normally close enough that it's believable. And also I find that it feels more naturalistic. Like if we're thinking of when we're actually looking at sunlight coming through a like a dark silhouette, light that's surrounded by darkness is going to have a different color and different brightness than sky that's airy and bright all over the place. So if the sky holes are just a little bit different from the sky color, that's fine. I think that's a real thing that happens. So in fact, sometimes I'll intentionally make the sky holes much brighter or much more chromatic, and it's sometimes a really nice effect. All right, and now I'm gonna get much bigger with my mark making because I'm making marks for this bigger tree that's in the foreground. All right, and now I'm going to do the same thing up here. And yeah, I'm going to make, you can see, I think I'm going to make the sky holes just a little bit lighter so that they pop a little bit more. I'm going to use a bigger brush. And let's see, maybe this will be a bad idea. Let's find out. So I'm mixing it off stage here. I've got Rondi blue and the indigo, and now I'm going to mix in some dirty white. And I think that'll pop too much, so let's see. Yeah, I think that pops too much, so I'm going to add in a little bit more indigo. I think that seems okay. Let's run with that a little bit. Just a bit. I'm not going to do it as much as everywhere else, just little spots. Okay, there. And let me see if I can. There you get a better sense. Okay, so I think we've bought ourselves enough time. What else, is there anything else we can do before the fire tower? Because that is definitely the last thing. I want to have this painting done by the time I do that. So let's take quick stock of where we are. Um, hmm. I don't like this color here. It looks muddy. Um, so I'll fix that. And what else? These rooftops, I like them, but maybe some like other lines that suggest, like they just kind of seem to be floating in space. Maybe I'll put like a doorway in or a little peak of a fence. I'll just add in a few more elements so that they don't feel so solitary. They're kind of just floating out in space. So, okay, so this, and then I think I'm happy with it. Yeah. And I'm gonna bring down the exposure. I feel like it's a little bleached out again. Ah, much better. You're probably like, oh, I can see it now. Should have done that a while ago. Okay. So first on the menu, I'm going to change this color. That should take me a minute. So I've got a fresh brush, and a little dip into white, and a little dip into, actually, I'm going to use that sky hole color I was just using. And then let's just, okay, and then I'm going to splay my brush, and then sweep it up into the clouds because I want to continue this texture here. So I kind of like that. I might do that a little more elsewhere as well. There we go. Okay. And all right, so that part's done. Now let's add in some elements to the roof line. So I'm gonna use again that color that I used for the sky holes in here. I have a big puddle of it off screen. Here, if you can see. Yeah, so here I made a big puddle, and I should use it up, so I will do that. Okay. It's kind of tough because actually I don't really see in the reference photo many suggestions, so I'm just going to make stuff up. Just some windows. Uh, big door here. And let's see here. Maybe I'll put a fence over here. And maybe I'll have the fence also appear over here. All this stuff's really hard to see. It's barely noticeable. Okay, I think it's just enough to look. I think I made that house too tall. Hold on. Get rid of that. That's better. Okay. So the fire tower. Last thing. I I still don't trust a dip pen on this. I think it's going to be too aggressive and like carve into the paint because the paint's tacky. So it's dry on the outside, but it's sort of like a skin that's covering up a wet pool. So a brush would roll right over that and a pen would carve into it and everything would bleed. So I'm gonna grab that liner brush that I was using for the trees because it's such a thin, really delicate point. Um, I think when I send out the recording, I can include a link to where to get this brush because it's quite handy for this. It's a new brush too. I've never used liners like this until somewhat recently, but these are Da Vinci Maestro Kolinsky Sables. So it's a size 1. I thought this was a synthetic actually. Um, yeah, it's lovely. Okay, so I'm going straight to the indigo. I'm going to make a fresh little well off to the side of, the black essentially. So indigo, burnt umber, little crimson. Okay, I'm going to dab off some of the excess. And let me get my reference photo. So it's right about here. And so I think just like the rainbow last month, I'd said that in my experience, the trick to making a naturalistic rainbow is to make it thinner than you think you need to. And it's the same with this fire tower. To make it seem really tall, I think we have to make it seem very slender because then the proportions will be that it's taller than it is wide, and then therefore it appears even taller. So I'm going to make it very narrow, and I am going to start with two parallel lines that go straight down vertical, so there's no angle. Because if you look at the structure of the fire tower, in the center, that's what you see. So I'm going to put it right there. Of course, my paint dried as I was talking on my brush. Okay. And I think it goes to about here. Um, when I was at this residency, one of the rangers who worked nearby, she'd been a park ranger all over the country, and she was specifically worked in fire towers, so she'd be the fire tower watch. Sometimes that was her assignment. I think I recall her saying that like old fire towers would be burned down and either rebuilt or there's some new technology that's replacing them. So she had this story of this woman that she knew who worked at one of the parks who had been, had worked in the same fire tower for decades. And she retired, and shortly after she retired, she saw it burn down because they took it down, and how sad it was because she spent her life in that single fire tower. I kind of wish I used a dip pen, but I think I'll go back in for sky holes, my favorite, to sort of correct some of the mistakes I feel I've made. Some of my brush strokes are just a little uneven. I don't know, they seem a little like wispy. I mean, they're delicate. That's what I wanted, so that's what I got. So for the line so far, I have two verticals that go straight down, two more on either side that are the ones that branch out to, you know, uh, grip the ground, I suppose. So the two that branch out from angles, and then I have the triangles that go down the center, and now I need some that go straight across horizontally. I could really take my time and replicate exactly what I see, but I don't think that's entirely necessary. Um, what I usually just do is I make sure I have lines going in multiple directions to help with the sense of structure and stability. Um, I think I've made it too thin. Um, okay, I am gonna grab the dip pen for up here and make that a little bigger. There we are. Okay, and I'm going to go back to the liner and do that again. Okay, and now I've got to continue my lines because I just extended everything. All right, and I just want to go back in. It looks like the zigzag in the center is thicker because I think it's the stairs. Just occurred to me. Oh yeah, they really stand out. So it's probably the stairs. Oh, but that same park ranger, I was asking her, I was so intrigued by her job. It just seemed so cool. So I was asking her about memorable days on the job. And she said there was one day, one single 24 hours where she got sprayed by 4 skunks. I thought that was so funny. Okay, last thing, sky holes, which I'm going to do these sky holes with a dip pen. Okay, so I'm dipping into white. I wonder if this will work. And my lines do look pretty dry. I'm going to test this. Okay, I think it's okay. So I'm going to start up here. I feel like it's not opaque enough. Drive me nuts. As I'm putting my pen down, I see a bead forming on the end, and so I'll quickly just shake it off on the other side of the page. But yeah, if you're doing that, just pay attention not just to what you're drawing, but also keep an eye on the pen nib itself to make sure it's not about to drop a gigantic puddle on your page. Wow, we finished this in exactly an hour and a half. Perfect timing. In fact, I think I started a couple minutes late, so it's good because I want to put just as much time into this now. Now I'm very invested and I could be here for a while, but no, I don't think it's necessary. Okay, and now I'm switching my color so that's the blue for down here. I don't think I need it as much down here. I feel like my mark making up here was more scrunched, so there was some like messy overlaps that I wanted to clean up. And down here, I think everything looks pretty much fine. Okay, I think it's done. Um, yeah, what a nice, relaxing piece. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad you all chose it. Thank you all for joining live, or thank you for watching the recording. I hope you're pleased with the painting. Please send me images of what you've done, whether you're doing your own sketchbook acrylic ink paintings that are totally different, unique to you, or if you're following along and painting along with me the same scene. I'm interested, so please email me missydunaway@gmail.com, and I'll see you all in a month. Good night.